This is Creating a Disruption. Welcome to Creating a Disruption, the podcast that focuses on ways to disrupt the traditional classroom by using engaging teaching and learning strategies. I am Brian Hall, Associate Professor of English and Coordinator of Studio 101 on the Metro campus of Cuyahoga Community College. And with me is our co-host, Kara DePaul, Director of Academic Professional Development. How are you doing?
Doing awesome today, Brian. It's the end of a semester.
It is end of the semester and end of our first season of Creating a Disruption, which I want to thank you for coming along this journey with me, because it was one of the things that I know I wanted to do is just to be able to talk to faculty to see what they're doing in the classroom beyond the traditional lecture. How are they getting their students involved? And I think we had a number of wonderful faculty members who just really got into sort of what they did in the class.
You know, I'm also pretty impressed, Brian, that we came up with this idea, in last spring semester.
Right.
We both wanted to start a teaching and learning podcast. And we were talking earlier today about ideas and how to hatch those ideas and make them come alive. And we did. We hatched this idea back in the spring, and we started this summer of 22. And here we are at our last and final episode of this academic year, our 10th episode.
I think it's one of those things that if you really decide to do something, you just do it and see how it all shakes out in the end. And I think it's worked out pretty well. And I think in teaching, that's the same way. I think a lot of the folks that we talked to, they had an idea to do something, and they're like, we're just going to try it and see what happens. Yeah. And I'm glad we were able to talk to them. And for today's episode, it's really a special treat because we were able to talk to a number of students who were in the classes that of the professors that we talked to. So we are highlighting Professor Lindsay Milam's class, Chef Ky-wai's class, and Professor Daniel Levin's class. And we were able to talk to some students from them to see sort of their experiences. So very excited to hear what they have to say and to sort of talk a little bit about sort of what they did say. First, let's talk about Lindsay Milam's class. So the two students who I interviewed were Katrina and Jack, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get into a little bit of what they talked about.
Hi, my name is Katrina Bishop.
And I am Jack Haberman.
We're in Professor Milam's 1020 English class.
It was nice working with different groups of people and getting to brainstorm or maybe getting to know them a little bit. Because in the classroom, outside of having discussion, you're not really I'm not chopping it up with people in class, which I think is a strong point of the studio.
Yeah, the studio, it definitely allows us to, be in contact with each other more and, just get to know each other and, talk amongst each other. And, so I got to know a lot of my classmates in that studio, a lot more bonding in that studio.
I'm a class participator, I want to participate.
Yes.
And I think when you're in the studio, there's a lot of kids in the class that, they just are shy or whatever. They don't participate a bunch. But when you're in the studio and you're in that group, it gives them a chance to break out of their shell a little bit or give their ideas that you might not hear in the classroom. Because they're just hanging on to those. So I think that it's beneficial for all the students just to help you break out a little bit. And hands-on learning is always nice. Instead of just writing on paper, you're using whatever art supplies or just getting creative.
Right, and it definitely makes our mind go a little further with the being creative with the art supplies and things like that, just being able to create things. I really like going to the studio because the studio, it puts things kind of in perspective about on whatever we're working on. But I do like the studio.
So for me, it was so good to hear, one, when we interviewed Lindsay, that she talked about the studio, because it's being the space that I coordinate. I see the value of the studio to engaging teaching and learning, having the students in the space and actually doing hands-on, testing their knowledge by either creating something or even just putting what they know on the board and having that in time conversation about what's going on. But to hear Katrina and Jack talk, just to know the students are also getting that experience as well. It's like all the things that I would want the studio to do, they saw it happen. And one of the things that even when I talk to other faculty, it is this an opportunity to get students in a different space where they might be more open to having a conversation. And just to hear them talk specifically about that, it sort of made me happy that the space is working the way that I would want it to, and the students had a good experience while in the space.
Sure. And Jack mentioned how, he would come into other classes and he wouldn't, maybe not necessarily socialize as frequently, in a typical classroom setting. And I feel like when you come into the studio space, like it is meant to invite you into an environment where you're free to walk around. You don't have to sit in a chair and just face one direction, face the front of the class, face the instructor. Like you're meant to look in all directions around you. And so it was good to hear that the students felt that way too. And it was really interesting to hear Lindsay talk about different ways that she utilized the space. And then also I think she had some stories about, things that she tried that worked well, and then things she tried that didn't work well, right? And then how she learned from those and how she pivoted and adapted to them. I think too, Brian, after we interviewed Lindsay, we had the opportunity to invite some additional new tenure track faculty to see the space and to use it, and to see them as instructors, right? Be in the students' seats and be in the movable desks and be doing some of the activities that the students would have done in the class. Like, I think it gave them the opportunity to be in that different perspective. They're not always in the student seat, right? They're up at the front of the class. They're leading the class instruction, everything like that. So it was really interesting to be able to hear Lindsay talk about how she used it, see the space visually in our, all the people that watched that episode, and then to be able to bring a new group of faculty into it to see how they could be doing it and how they could be using it.
And I would say that during that session with the new faculty, getting them sort of to experience how a student experiences being in a space that is not traditionally what they think of as classroom, because a lot of the things that happen in that faculty development session are the same things that students do, which is automatically go, why are we using Legos? Like, what is the purpose of doing all of this? But at the end, seeing that purpose and having them, well, I know a lot of them seem to go, oh, I get it. Like, look how we were able to have a conversation around this particular idea and to show it and then be able to present it, right? And having students to have, or knowing that's how students also feel, like maybe a little hesitant at first, but once they get into it, I mean, most of the time students just want to continue to have that experience in this space because it just puts them at a comfort level, even though they may have started out uncomfortable, that they move to being comfortable in that space and wanting more hands-on experience, as Katrina and Jack talked about. So of course, for me, completely biased. Loved hearing about how effective Studio 101 was in their learning, and always so happy to hear how Lindsay uses the space and continues to use the space.
Is she still using the space?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Many times I'm watching her classes and then maybe using similar assignments for my own classes that I see work very well. But no, the energy of that space is, when the students are in there, is just phenomenal. And you can walk down the hallways and it's very quiet. Come by the studio and you just see that energy and enthusiasm. And
did you talk to Katrina and Jack about their desire to have additional classes utilize this space? Like, do they go into their next class and maybe met with a little bit of shock because they're back into a traditional classroom, and kind of, miss that opportunity to engage and do Legos and do creative applications of things?
I didn't talk to them directly about it. They didn't mention that. But in the past, I have talked to students and have surveys of students who have used the space in a number of classes. And it does come back very positive of students wanting to have more spaces like this on campus, or even knowing ahead of time what classes would use it because they would take the class. Just this semester at the end of one class, I overheard a student leaving saying she's going to register for classes for the fall. And she goes, I'm going to figure out what classes use the studio so I can continue to use that space. So maybe down the line in the future, there will be some way to indicate on a schedule classes that utilize the studio.
Do you think down the line that other campuses could adopt a similar model at each location so that there's a studio at all 4 campuses?
I would love that, of course, right? Because I see such value in it, and not just the individual research that I have done through the years of coordinating it, but also looking at the value of interactive spaces, spaces that allow for easily to use active learning strategies in it, to use more experiential learning strategies as part of it. Student engagement goes up, right? And I think a lot of times, we talk about all these things that we can do as an institution, which involves retention, getting students in, that we sort of forget to go, what's happening within the classroom? How are we going to get students excited about showing up and seeing what's being done in the classroom? And Studio 101 makes really every class period unique. And I would love for more students to have that experience. So I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful too, because I think that, as an instructor that teaches at Western Campus, I would love to have the ability to have my students come in here, have business students come in here and, I come in here and get inspired every day, right? And I see the different projects that you've worked on and Lindsay's class and, other instructors that use this space. So I'm hopeful one day too.
Yeah, we'll see. Because the energy is great in these spaces. Similar to the energy, this is a great transition, to Chef Ky-wai, who, when we did talk to him, the energy he had during that conversation, you could just feel it. He was so excited about teaching, and just sort of the experiences that he has his students have. And we were fortunate enough to have 2 students, Tariq and Richard, who are more than happy to come into the studio to talk about their experiences. And they first talked about their experiences in doing work in the Catholic Center.
Richard Norman.
Tariq Lopez.
We're students of Chef Ky-wai. So a part of our banquet management class, we went to the Catholic Center. So we fed bunch of homeless people and stuff, and what I thought was cool, just the whole experience, because I used to do that when I was younger with my mom and dad. It just kind of brought back memories, of being able to help people out and just see the smiles on their faces when they're getting food. It was just really cool to me, and I never really experienced something like that in a class before. So, yeah, that's just how I felt about it.
The Catholic Center, that was a real eye-opener for me. And I do a lot of volunteer work at times, especially during the holidays. Mm-hmm. So I understand where they're at and how that actually makes them feel. And you always get that warm feeling on the inside when you do something nice for somebody. And basically the program, we're getting the hands-on experience. We're actually out there interviewing the clients, as they would say, and we're getting the raw reactions from everybody that's coming to the events, and it's making it easier for us for when we actually go out and do our own thing.
So one of the things that I enjoyed in the conversation with Chef is, by nature of that program and his classes, they need that real world experience. They need experiential learning to make it happen. And it's just great to hear, one, the connection with the Catholic Center in order to do that, to give the students an opportunity to not only learn, but also to help others. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, and you think about in that situation, right, in experiential learning and hospitality, for example, there is nothing like being on a line or being on the floor during a busy time of the year, serving food, preparing the food, and you can't replicate that experience in a textbook. You can't do it. It has to happen in real time with people around you. And so I think that the fact that he created that opportunity too, right? Like he made those connections, he made those partnerships, and brought his students there, and really his energy is contagious, right? And you can tell he comes from that industry, right? Of like the excitement and the, getting people together and all around this like shared goal of getting this huge meal together, timed perfectly, and getting it out to, however many people that they fed that day. So I think that it's an opportunity to bring students into that situation in a way that also is benefiting like our college, benefiting our community, giving them a taste of the experience of what it is going to be like to feed large quantities of people.
And it was a learning experience that both of them really appreciated. And so let's hear a little bit more what they have to say about their learning experiences.
As chefs and stuff, we got to play a lot of things by ear, do things on the fly. It'd be a lot of last minute things. But with the class, like Ky-wai, especially with Ky-wai, he always shows us that it's a simpler way to do things, and it's a way to make things easier going along, especially when that day comes for an event. So if you're doing a party or doing a wedding or just anything like banquet style, and it doesn't even have to be banquet style. It could be as far as if you're starting a restaurant or a food truck or a little stand, like just preparing everything, have everything mapped out the way you want it to be. So then as soon as you check all the boxes, then it's just coming like clockwork.
To touch on because everything's not always perfect, like the bad side of it too, you have to be aware of what's going on, let's for an example, like if a fight starts, or if something crazy happens, because it can happen. You need to be able to know how to control the situation. You need to know like all the precautions and everything, like if people need to leave, if you need to bring people in, so you just got to be aware of everything that's going on around you. And as like that leader, people are going to be coming to you with questions about things like any allergies or like it's just teaching us kind of like almost everything he said, just being prepared for anything and everything, and just making sure you're in that position where you can provide all of that information for everyone who needs it.
That's the benefit of having like those experiences, because even as you mentioned, it allows them to get that real world experience on what to do, maybe even when things go sideways, and being able to have that training and being in that environment that allows, if it's not perfect, that's all right, because Chef is there, but it gives the students the opportunity to see what it's like.
Someone just sent me a quote this morning. It wasn't just to me, it was to multiple people, but it was, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. I thought
that's great.
I thought about that quote a lot, and what the students were saying, right, about it's not always going to be perfect, but you can plan ahead, right? And you can shift and change, and you can respond, accordingly and on your feet and on the fly, right? And that is something that is learned only, in the field. It also kind of made me wonder, the Cleveland.com or Cleveland Magazine just issued like the Silver Spoon Restaurant Award winners, and the best of Cleveland, like the top restaurants in Cleveland. And it always makes me wonder, like as I'm going about my personal life, and I'm going to restaurants in Cleveland, or I'm going to my dentist's office, and I'm wondering and often asking, where did you go to school? Where did you do your dental hygiene program? Where did you do your culinary arts program? Or you hear people talking, at the parks or whatever. And it just makes me think about like how the Tri-C students and the Tri-C energy then just gets spread out into our community, right? And then it comes back to us, and it comes back in the form of a delicious meal that's been prepared, or a nurse or a dental hygienist taking care of us, as we're, laying there getting some dental work done. So just thinking about how what we put in as in faculty goes into our students and then eventually comes back to us in some great ways.
Yeah. And in Chef Ky-wai's class, the energy comes from him.
For sure.
Because I did ask the students specifically, how is it being a student of Chef Ky-wai? And because I did tell them that, as we mentioned during the interview, he had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so let's take a listen of their thoughts on Chef Ky-wai.
This was my first semester with him, so I didn't know how he was going to be. It's always that, what if he's a mean teacher or something like that? Just my first day there, I was just so impressed. He's running around the kitchen, he's helping everybody with everything, answering questions. Meanwhile, he's washing dishes and sweeping and mopping. He's just on top of everything. You'll think a lot of people think the person in charge, just sits back and manage, or they're just sitting at their desk while we're doing all the work.
Right.
He's doing everything. He's managing, he's cleaning, he's handling situations. He's if we forgot something, he's on top, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, helping us if we have any questions or if something goes wrong, fixing it. And it's never a bother for him, It's not I would never, if I ever had a question, I would never be afraid to ask him or if he's busy, he just makes you feel comfortable to be able to ask him anything, no matter how busy he is or so that was just one thing I was very impressed with about him.
I've had KY actually a couple of times, and from my journey all through this program that they have here, he's been one of my biggest supporters, and I can honestly say that he's a real he's like a mentor to me. I done seen his good side, I done seen the bad side, what people would consider a bad side, and he, just like Richard was saying, it's never a problem for him to help anybody with anything. I've always seen him go above and beyond to help everybody, anyone in the kitchen. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be somebody in the next class. If they come over and ask him something, he'll answer. He'll do it to the best of his ability to help them out. And he didn't help me grow as a chef and instill certain leadership tendencies into me that I didn't have before meeting him. And he's actually helped me push myself to working on my craft and becoming better at my craft, pushing things out, staying on top of things. And because he stays on top of all of us. I know he stays on top of me a lot, so I know it with everybody else. He's doing the same thing. And he's just overall a great guy, great energy. Anytime he's in the kitchen, I know it's going to be a good day.
So I think the last thing that Tariq said, that, every day that he knows that Chef Ky-wai is in the kitchen, he knows it's going to be a good day, right? And, can you imagine knowing and feeling and having the confidence in another human being and in a professor that you're going to come to class, you're going to learn, you're going to be engaged, and Chef Ky-wai's energy was definitely contagious. It almost felt like we were containing him in a room when he was meant to be moving around. And so I could see how that could influence his students and kind of inspire him to be, at that pace. But it also makes me, realize that these are, three of the four faculty that won the Excellence in Teaching Award in honor of Ralph M. Bessie. And you're hearing from students directly, this is why. This is why they were nominated. This was why they were selected to receive this award. And I definitely left that episode wanting to sign up for Chef Ky-wai's class.
Right.
I also left a little bit hungry too, because we talked about his experience in culinary school and everything. But.
Yeah, and so speaking of, wanting to sign up for a class, after Professor Daniel Levin was here and hearing about the bookmaking class and seeing the wonderful work his students did in his photography classes, I really wanted to take one of those classes. And like, it's just so amazing to see the work that they put into it. And Jackie had a lot to say about the class. So let's listen to Jackie talk about Professor Daniel Levin's photography classes.
I'm Jackie Bosinger. I'm a student at Tri-C, and I've been a student of Professor Dan Levin's photography classes, Photography 2, Photography 3, and most recently, Individual Projects in Photography. My individual experience with Professor Levin, which was very significant, other than the first two training grounds, I would like to say, Photo 2 and 3, was our individual projects in making books. And why this was disruptive in a sense for me, I like to say it's life-changing, because up until that point I was becoming a good technical person, but I never was a storyteller. And so all of a sudden I'm given this challenge to create a book from nothing, my experiences, my life, and it's not just images. We also had to write, in a cohesive manner, text, and we had to lay it out, and we had to publish it. Or have it published. And when I think about it now, it's pretty daunting, and you have to do that in a semester. But what a great experience. For me, I chose to photograph things of the past. My book was called The Things We Leave Behind. And I photographed different objects in the community, of my own families. And what Professor Levin did for me that was invaluable is he always challenged me. And it wasn't just about do better, it was show me different ways, different techniques. One of the things he showed me was how to use a scanner as a camera. Well, I never even imagined that you could do that, and now I'm making these incredibly detailed images that really help me tell the story. And I like to also say how he gives feedback. It's very important as a photographer to get honest feedback. And he's never done it in a condescending way, and he's an accomplished photographer and artist himself, but he always affirms his students, but also gives honest feedback so you can get better. And sometimes I'd walk away exasperated because I think I'd come to class with something really good, and he would say, tone this up, do this, or my favorite phrase, it's too flat. Anybody who's ever taken a course from him and heard those words will either cringe or smile at that. And the end result is I published this beautiful book that I'm proud of. And it's something that not just lasts for a course, it lasts for a lifetime. It's something that hopefully I will leave behind. And this experience gave me that from Tri-C.
So one of the things you mentioned when we talked about Chef Ky-wai was inspiring. And I think all the people that we spoke to this year find ways to inspire students and to get just a little bit more out of them and finding the proper way to do it. And it was so great to hear Jackie talk about that experience and talk about how Dan was able to get more out of her by the way that he provided feedback.
Yeah, and something else that caught me in her comments, she mentioned that she learned the technical skills, but then she also learned the art of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about what value our college adds, right, to a student's life. You can know all the technical skills, you can be taught them, you can learn them, you can apply them, you can grow with them. But then there's also this other side too, right? Like this, we were talking earlier about how students need kind of both sides of an education, right? They need the technical skills, but they also need the critical thinking and the application and how to communicate and how to dialogue and how to storytell. And I think that one of the things that Professor Levin's, remember he brought the stack of all of the different, all the different published books that the students had made over the year, and the time and energy that he put into making sure that each and every one of those books was produced, right? Certainly above and beyond, I think what happens sometimes in a normal classroom setting, and these students take this class and leave with their own printed hardbound copy book that is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, these books could be tabletop artwork
Right.
that you'd see in Barnes and Nobles and all these other bookstores. And you think about the fact that they made that in one semester. So in 16 weeks, they went from not knowing how to necessarily shoot a photo, but now they can shoot photos, they can edit them, and they can tell an entire story about something that is deeply personal to them and tie it all together in this beautiful package.
Right. And the importance of not only, as you were saying earlier, not only just to be able to do it, have the skill to do it, but to be able to be critical about it, to be reflective about the whole process, to have a greater understanding of why it's working, how the narrative is working and how it's not working. And, that is part of the being a well-rounded student, that they're able to then go out into the world and be able to not only do the job, but then to excel at the job. And to your other point, I mean, just having the actual physical copy of their work, something they can take with them, something that will hopefully be passed down through generations to say, look at not only the pictures that the student has taken, but the story that they told. And a lot of them aren't just personal stories. A lot of them are things that they reached out into the community. So you saw the stories that interest them of other people, and just how powerful each one of them were. I mean, the table that we were sitting at, for those listening, it's a round table, and it was just filled with all of the books that he brought. I think they were in a suitcase.
Yeah,
they just a rolling suitcase that he just dumped them all out. And just to see all of them, it was quite powerful. And it was so glad that students have the opportunity to have that experience when they take that class. This is really amazing.
So, Brian, when we first sat down, we were talking about how, I mentioned that I was proud of us, right? That we took an idea and we brought it to life. I would like to plant the next idea, because I would like to be a student in Professor Levin's class, and I'd like to make one of those photo books. And then I hope that you can invite me back as a guest, as a student, right? Of having that experience and seeing the other side of it. And I hope that, other faculty feel inspired and maybe want to continue learning, maybe take, a class of one of these, or encourage their students to reach out and branch out and explore, what other opportunities and other disciplines at the college. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great, but you have to ask the co-host.
Oh, okay. And yeah, and I think
sometimes she's a little picky about things. So this was just a tremendous first season of Creating a Disruption. I want to thank all of the faculty member who took time out of their busy semester, and even coming in before the semester began in the summertime to record. It was just so great to learn from them, to get ideas, and hopefully you listening also got some ideas of things you can do in class, because it was just for me, it was just a really powerful experience, and it's something that I'm so glad we decided to go through with it. Yeah. Even though we might not have known 100% what we were doing,
but along the way.
Yeah, we found out as we went. So
what's next for us?
Well, next would be season 2, if you're on board to continue this journey. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to all of the upcoming Bessie Award winners. Absolutely. And then also branch out and continue to talk to more faculty who are doing what they can to disrupt their classrooms. So on that note, I would like to end with all the students talking about what the teacher meant to them and or the college meant to them. So until next season, talk to you then.
I've learned so much from her, in this short amount of time. I like the fact that she's hands-on with her students, and with our writing process. She breaks everything down. She shows us examples. She's very, very informative and very engaged with her classmates.
Also super supportive.
Supportive.
She gives you affirmations when you're doing stuff right. If you need a hand, I've emailed her at like 11 and like she's getting back to me like she wants to help you succeed. And she does. I actually feel like that she cares. Like I've had other professors where like, not that they don't care obviously, but you know, it's more cut and dry. Like I feel like she knows me to a degree for having her for 2 semesters, and like yeah, I hope I get to see her throughout the rest of my time going, just to say hello or whatever, because she has been super supportive, and she has, what's the word I want to use? She's given me more confidence in my writing over the past couple semesters. Not that I ever thought I was bad. I've always thought I've had like a little bit of a knack, but being in the class and just like with the papers I've turned in and seeing my grades on them and her feedback and everything, it helps me feel that like, okay, I am a good writer. And I feel like she's helped me a lot with that. Because in high school, I was like, okay, but I wasn't doing as well as I am now, and getting those types of affirmations and positive feedback. And she's also lets you know when you know, this or that could be different, but she does it in a good way. She's never like getting down on you about anything. If anything, she's like, this needs a little work next time. I'll help you, like ask me, which I think is really helpful in a professor.
I want to thank the program and everyone that's has something to do with the program. I personally feel like the program it saved my life. I didn't know what I was gonna go to college for when I first went, and I went for a whole year before I actually switched over and came to this program and found out that I actually enjoy it. Everything I do now, business-wise, life-wise, I'm working with people, coming up with solutions, finding problems, and, you know, just playing everything by ear. You never know where life is going to take you, and I'm just glad it brought me here.
I would add that Professor Levin was instrumental in my becoming a more accomplished photographer, but all the different experiences at Tri-C just elevated me and kept raising the bar. And so for all of that, as a student, I feel like it's all been disruptive. My family would say it's disruptive completely because I walk around with a camera all the time now and talk about photography and talk about Tri-C all the time. But I'm proud of that. And I'm proud to be a student here and grateful to Professor Levin and all the other faculty here for setting me on this journey.